morning, everyone. Am I coming across? Am I on? Not up and down if you can hear me. All right. Hi, Leslie. How are you? Good to see you. Hey, Tanya. Just getting launched here. Hi, everybody on Facebook as well. We are live and ready to go. And hello, Aaron and Fred. So we're just letting people come on. And we're talking today about messy church. How many people know zero about messy church? And how many know something about messy church? And how many people know lots about messy church? Yeah, so there's a kind of variety. So some more people coming on Facebook. So what I thought I'd do is go through a few things and talk a bit about messy church in general, and then we can have a conversation and then go into a few more specifics about what it takes to launch messy church and to do messy church. And I'm just waiting a little bit. Hey, Leslie. Hold on. There we go. I just got to put my sound on. Say that again. Can you start again? I didn't have my sound on.
Are you recording this? And is it something we can share afterwards?
Yes. We're on Facebook. Yeah, and we're going to put it on YouTube. So, yes. Absolutely. We're good to go. People are coming on. Hey, Nikki. Hi, Don. How are you? I haven't seen you forever. It's good to see a lot of friends. So I just get back as well. I'm all zoomed up about Messy Church because I was at the International Messy Church Conference in the UK last week. And hey, there's Ryan. Are you watching me? Ryan's flying to Vancouver. Are you watching me on Air Canada as we speak? That's amazing. I am on a plane flying across Canada with Ryan now. And I think what impressed me a lot I've always loved Messy Church. I think it's a very powerful tool to use, and it's so much more than just crafting. Crafting is like the medium that we use. But there were people from all over the world there, practitioners of Messy Church, and from New Zealand and South Africa, as well as quite a lot of European countries, and of course Canada and the United States. We had a large Canadian contingent from all across the country. But I was very impressed in particular with the European contingent, the different countries, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, even Croatia was represented, Hungary, and so countries that I often thought would be quite hard countries for gospel ministry. Germany is particularly of interest because I've got a lot of German family, and so I just know that church there is a very difficult scene for a lot of people, and yet there are 30 messy churches in Germany, and they're really putting a structure in place, and there's some very excited people about messy church in Germany right now, and they call it the Kirche Kunterbund because messy church doesn't work in German very well. So apparently it has unfortunate connotations, and so but they're beginning to get a structure and work together, and there are these different experiments happening, and people get the power of what messy church is able to do, and so it's really exciting to see how it's kind of working out in different countries and different languages. And so I'm really excited about talking about it today, because I just think that the overall sense there was just of how much God is doing through messy church all over the world. And the focus of the conference was very much on continuing that focus on discipleship, using messy church as a discipleship tool, and kind of recognizing that's the real power of messy church is in discipleship. It's a different kind of discipleship from, say, an Alpha course or Christianity 101. It's a longer term view of discipleship, but discipleship is at its core. This is the new Messy Church logo, by the way, which people ask you to use. You'll notice that the letters are they're a little flatter. I think that's the change. And this is the French, the one that we have, and you can use as well. L'Église pêle-mêle. I think it means church kind of all over the place. Is that right, Tanya? You speak French, I think. So we spoke a little bit about that at the conference. There's even, by the way, if you're interested, a new thing called Messy Vintage, which is bringing messy church into seniors' homes and seniors' events, and that's kind of taking on as well because people love crafting. I think crafting is a very healing thing to do, by the way. I'm not very good at crafting, but we were doing some crafting when we were there. We had to make flames, and we were putting them on, the burning bush, and we were given pieces of tissue paper, and the woman next to me took 3 pieces of tissue paper and immediately made a flame. And I took my pieces of tissue paper and kind of made this scrunch. And she looked and said, "You're very good." And I felt really affirmed by that, and I thought, that must be the power of crafting. So, okay, I've got a warning to start off with about Messy Church. So, do not attempt to start Messy Church if what you want to do is replenish your Sunday morning congregation, or you want new people to take responsibility for doing things at your church, or you are looking for new donors to keep the doors open. If your hope is that you start Messy Church and there will be a pipeline of people into your morning congregation, you'll probably be disappointed. And the focus of Messy Church is not on building more Sunday morning people, but it is meeting people where they are, people for whom Sunday morning church just doesn't work. And sometimes it doesn't work because of time, and sometimes it doesn't work just because they've been hurt by institutional church, and it doesn't work emotionally. And so Messy Church is a really key tool in welcoming people and saying, this is church. A bit like dinner church. We have our supper club here once a month in the diocese, and people will say, this is my church. And that's a really key thing. So that doesn't mean, though, in the longer term, that people will not maybe come to your morning service or come to some of your other events. It's just that that's not the goal. And if you make that the goal, you're not going to do Messy Church properly, because you'll be wanting them to move on. And you need to value your Messy Church congregation as a congregation. And there's Jim. Hey, Jim. Morning. We're just getting going, so you're just in time. So those are not good reasons to start Messy Church. But I also thought, do not attempt to start Messy Church unless you're really willing to try for about a year. I suggest about 9 Messy Churches in a year, but it's not a one-off event. So you need to prepare yourselves to be willing to go for about an academic year, a school year. Secondly, you've got to be willing to divert some resources of time, energy, and even some money to this new work in your church. It's not really that expensive. I mean, any church that has a large Sunday school craft cupboard may have a lot of the things you need to do Messy Church, but you need to be willing to share your Sunday school craft supplies with Messy Church, which is not always as easy as you think sometimes. And it may be that you find, because you're doing Messy Church, that you can't do other things. For example, if you do Messy Church and you're putting on a meal for up to 60 or 70 people once a month, then you may not want to put on other meals at other times. So it could have a changing effect on your schedule. And don't do it unless you want to make new friends, because you will make a lot of new friends doing Messy Church, and that's what's kind of really fun about it, and it's really thrilling. And lastly, don't start Messy Church unless you are prepared for your congregation to become turbocharged, because when a congregation really does Messy Church, it is so exciting. And even though, like I said, the purpose is not to get people to come to Sunday morning church, and they may not come to Sunday morning church, but if you have a group of people, you're doing Messy Church, you're meeting new friends, you're welcoming new people, you're putting this on, it is so exciting, it changes the atmosphere of your church. And in that way, transforms your Sunday morning church as well. Because I think, walking into a church of people who are excited and motivated is really different from walking into a congregation of people who are dispirited and downcast, don't you think? I mean, I find sometimes after a successful Messy Church, where I was before, everyone was so excited, they couldn't stop talking Sunday morning. They had so many stories to tell. And I think, that's probably a lot more attractive than, as I said, a bunch of people with their heads down and no sense of mission or strategy. So those are just some warning. Messy Church is powerful. Okay, so what is Messy Church? It's a form of church for children and adults. It's all age, and it includes creativity, celebration, and hospitality. And it is designed and focused for people who don't belong to another form of church. So it is coming under that Fresh Expressions umbrella. And so it meets at a time and even in a place that suits people who don't already belong to church. So Sunday morning typically, or Sunday, even the weekend, is not really a strong Messy Church time. Most meet during the week at some point, Because what we want to do is we want to offer something to people rather than demand from them. And that's why it includes welcome, creativity, celebration, and a meal. The meal is really crucial. Because church can be very demanding. And so we're trying to make it easier for people to come. And we offer them a meal, we break bread together, and we make friends that way. And Messy Church is fun. It's meant to be a lot of fun. It's also a church for people at all stages in their faith journey, and it is a congregation that is valuable and worthy of investment as any other. And that's a really important mindset to get into if you're going to have Messy Church. This is a congregation, and you're going to invest in that congregation. It only meets once a month, and that's really important. It doesn't meet every week, but it is still a congregation, and you need to have that in your mind and communicate that to people, because what it communicates to the people who come is that you are valuable, you are a form of church, and you are at church. And it is so powerful in Messy Church when you have people who say, wow, so this is church. So I've been to church. And then they start inviting their friends, come, because it's church. Sometimes, we don't want to guilt people and things, but sometimes people do feel guilty about not going to church, but they just can't manage it because, they're busy. And so Messy Church kind of takes that burden off them. And so we call it a congregation. And its aim is to introduce Christ to people and to give people a chance to grow in their faith. It just does it in a different way. It's not the sort of alpha, 12-week, follow this steps kind of way. It's a much more extended way. And we introduce Jesus in every aspect of the Messy Church experience, and including in our relationships. Messy Church comes under the umbrella of the Bible Reading Fellowship. So I don't know if you know what that is, but that's kind of the publishing arm of the Church of England in the United Kingdom. So it's resourced and supported by the BRF, is what we call it. And as I said, most Messy churches meet once a month. Some do meet more frequently, but it's very intensive in your resources. And so once a month, I suggest 9 times a year is about right, but it depends on your congregation. So as I said, BRF and Messy Church. Messy Church is under the umbrella of BRF. BRF staffs Messy Church International, if you like, and provides the resources that we use for Messy Church. So you can always check that out. I'll show you the websites in a second. So what is Messy Church? Messy Church is not, I've got some nots, it's not just for children, it's all age fun, and that's really important. So it's not a club, it's not a craft event, and it welcomes everybody. It's for the outsider as well. It is important that it's not just for children, it's for all age. That's kind of the power of it. When you have grandparents and parents and children and singles and everyone there, it's a really powerful thing. As I said before, it's not a way of getting to people to come to church on Sunday. It is interdependent with the established church, but operates somewhat separately from the Sunday morning church. It's not about child minding program. Messy Church is really strong about not allowing drop-offs. It's not a place where you can drop your kid off for 2 hours. We really want families and singles and everybody else to gather together and have this fellowship together. So no drop-offs. If you allow drop-offs and then you're ending up in a child care situation, then that can be really tricky. It's not just for families either, actually. Anyone can go to Messy Church. And they can be young or old, it's whoever they are, all are welcome. Single, widowed, childless, divorced, gay or straight, community, right? It's all community. And we've seen that really powerfully in different Messy churches. I was at one, we used to have a divorce care group met at our church, and we invited the divorce care participants to come to Messy Church. And at first I wondered if that was, a good idea. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful because, we all form family together, and you're all sitting around a table crafting, and that's really healing. That's why, it's amazing. Crafting is healing. I'm not really good at it, but there's something about sitting around a craft table, making things with glitter and pom-poms and pipe cleaners, and talking and sharing, and you're all mixed in, and it's very powerful. So it's for everyone. It's not just for families. On the other hand, it does bring families together, and that's really important too. So often people will come, and dads will show up later for dinner, and it's all good. It's also not a quick fix, because growing disciples takes time, and Messy Church understands that it's a long process. That's why we build relationships and we just keep at it month after month. But as I said, it will also have a transformative effect on the culture of your congregation. It's not an easy option. It does take resources, and you have to be willing to commit to it for the long haul. But it's not a drain on church resources. It's going to give back to you so much more. And I think it's important, just some people will say, well, hold on, are they going to start paying for this yet? When are they going to pay their own way? And I've heard that. And, you know, Messy Church pays back in much more powerful ways than just money. Although it is important to get Messy Churchers to begin to own their community. It will inspire you. You're going to get new ideas. And I think what's really important as well is it's going to grow your goodwill in your neighborhood and amongst these people, because now they're going to remember, if some of these people are looking for a church, they're going to remember that nice church, you know, that nice St. Philip's church or whatever, that did Messy Church, and where they fed us all those nice food, and you know, and so it will improve really your reputation in the neighborhood. So it's really, really good. And finally, it's not set in stone. We're all learning all the time, and so the Bible Reading Fellowship doesn't want to be a controlling presence. They really see themselves as a supporting presence, and God is continuing to work in Messy Church and grow Messy Church. So there's a basic structure for Messy Church, but you have to figure out what the Holy Spirit is doing in your Messy Church and in your community with that. And there's a basic structure which I'll look at for how you do a Messy Church, but there's always these amazing ideas. We did a Messy Church murder mystery while we were at the conference. It was really cool, right? You know, so there's just endless possibilities of what you can do. It's creative, so allow that spirit of creativity to just to permeate your thinking. And so those are the components: creativity, hospitality, celebration, all age, and Christ-centered. And those are the pieces which together make Messy Church. And we really encourage you to do all of those components. So you have the creativity, but you also have the hospitality. The dinner is very important. If you don't do the dinner, you're missing a piece. Dining together just, it seems to be so important in so many movements in the church. Dinner, church. If you do it Alpha, they want you to have a dinner. So along with the creativity, we have that dinner time. We also have a celebration. This is church. So there is a place for some prayer and for some singing and telling the story. Again, it's not like we would do on Sunday morning. It's different. It's Messy Church, but it's still there. And then it's all age. Does anyone want to pause at that point with any comments, questions, or thoughts?
I always have something to say. You know me, Neil.
Absolutely.
So my role is equipping parishes to do the things they want to do, and some of them want to try Messy Church. And one of the challenges is that they don't have support from their incumbent, from the priest. And the part that I find really concerning is we're trying to get the wrong folks on board. Like, the folks who've been involved in children and family ministry, they get this. They understand it. They don't need to be inspired and encouraged.
Yeah.
They'll go. The problem is getting folks who can participate in meaningful worship and theological formation with everybody on board.
Yeah.
That's what I see is missing. It's not the creativity, the capacity is missing, the hospitality is certainly not missing, but the idea of being able to do all age meaningful worship, and all ages meaningful theological reflection in this context is the biggest challenge. So I'd love for you to, if you have some insight about how that's happening, maybe at the conference level, in terms of helping clergy understand the role and value of this, and empowering their lay people to be able to do the theology and the worship with folks.
It is a really crucial piece, actually. I think you're right, because it's the difference between a craft event and church, right? It really is just the difference. And I think that the lay people who, as you say, have the creativity and hospitality are often hungry for that support. They want that support, because if you're doing a craft, like, you know, there's a theme for the evening. It could be, you know, Christ is our cornerstone, Ephesians. And the people do, and those themes permeate through like all the activities. And so even the craft will somehow pick up on that theme. The craft is a teaching point. It's not just a craft for its own sake. And so I think that the people doing the craft have often been really looking for that support. Certainly at the conference, I was really impressed by the fact that most of the people at the conference were we had some bishops there. We had a bishop from New Zealand, and there were a lot of different denominations involved from around the world, actually. But there were a lot of what I would call diocesan staff. It's whatever they have, you know what I mean? Like whatever their denomination has, we're all there, right? So there is, in a lot of places, increasing support from the sort of diocesan or judicatory level. And I think, it is really important, because most of the Messy Church themes, like, if you get the Get Messy magazine, they have a theological reflection as part of the monthly package. But I think it is important, like, for the leaders of Messy Church, they themselves need to be discipling themselves. Yeah. And the role, I think, of the priest can be simply to work through that theological reflection with them and help them and pray with them. Because it's important. It makes the difference between a craft event and a church. Leanne.
So we do have a question from Facebook, so thanks for the questions on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
This one's from Facebook. It's from Catherine Curley. She says, Neil, you had mentioned that churches get energized after starting Messy Church. Our church has been doing Messy Church for years, and we're finding that numbers are down and our energy toward the overall program has lessened. I'm new to the parish, I'm new to Messy Church, but I'm told this is the trend. How can we reignite the excitement toward Messy Church?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It sounds like some sense of renewal is often needed. How long have you been doing it in your church? Years. Wow. You guys are veterans. It is one of the issues with Messy Church in that it can be tiring. So it's true over the longer term. And especially when people are, the same people are doing things, they get tired, because doing, those meals every month can be a drain. And I think there's a couple of things that I've noticed are really important. One is, and I'll just touch on this at the end, is the style of leadership. Sometimes, and I don't know anything about your church, so I've noticed that the style of leadership can be very much what we call a to or for leadership, that we put this on for you. And what's really important is that Messy Churchers own their community and begin to work with members of the congregation. And I think it's in that relationship between Messy Church participants and members of a congregation where there can often be a lot of energy, and because it's so exciting to meet new people and to watch these people taking their place in the community at Messy Church. So that would be one thing. I would kind of want to look at who are the people who are really running Messy Church, and are you welcoming Messy Church churchers into that leadership? Otherwise, you see, they just sort of stay as consumers. Is that a helpful answer?
Great.
Others? Can I go on?
Yeah.
Ta-da! As I said, it's about making disciples. And I think that discipleship focus is really important. And that's actually interesting that it's sort of beginning to kind of broaden out now. Like, people are beginning to look beyond just the Messy Church event, especially in the United Kingdom. There is a resource called Holy Habits. I didn't get a slide up, but that is kind of coming alongside Messy Churchers. And so, there is the Messy Church event, but a lot of Messy Church families are starting to ask about wanting to grow in their faith. So some resources are coming online for groups and group discussions. So, look up Holy Habits and see if that's something, because that's about discipleship. But I think it's just important to keep that discipleship focus in every Messy Church and not to lose sight of that. I think it starts with the leaders. All of us need to be people who are disciples. And Messy Church is a great way of yourself growing as a disciple. And as I said, you use the Messy Church material, reflect upon that, pray together, seek God's will for your Messy Church, and look and see what are the things God is doing in your Messy Church. Because if you're a disciple, then you'll be on that journey with some of the people coming along. And it is so exciting watching people come to Messy Church and begin to grow in their own faith. But you take a long view of that. It takes a very long view. Just building relationships, keeping that focus, and seeing what happens, as I said, over maybe 7 or 8 years, and seeing how it goes. All right, we're going to get into some nuts and bolts about getting started and doing messy church. So the first thing you need to do, you do need to gather a team and begin to work with the resources. And one of the most important things is to take the time you need to prepare for this. And ask yourself what you have to give up to do messy church, or what you need to shift around in the life of your church. And so prepare yourself to run a full year before you actually launch. Because if you prepare yourself to run, one messy church, and you go, oh, okay, thank goodness we did that, but there's next month, right? So you really need to be prepared. My suggestion, and people have different experiences, is that you aim to run about 9 sessions per year. We tried running 12 and going all year long, but it's just tiring. As wonderful as it is, it's tiring to do that. And when you get to July, August, you don't want to put that on. So I think it's better to take that time off. And it depends on when you run your messy church, but say you do it on the 4th week of the month, like say the 4th Wednesday, then you do September, October, November, and you do your messy church Christmas in November. And then what you can do is December, right? The 4th week is Christmas. And so guess what? Hey, we're having a Christmas pageant at our church. We have a family service at 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve. You could invite messy churchers to that. And that's a nice way to make a link to traditional church. And see if maybe they'll think about, hey, well, we're looking for a church for Christmas. We'll come to your church. So I think that's a really great way of kind of synergizing between traditional church and messy church. So, and then you go from January through to June, and then I think you take the summer off. Some people you could do a messy barbecue on the front lawn instead, just have a barbecue and games. There's messy sports. You could do messy outdoors. So you could do something less than a full messy church if people want to get together, but give yourself a break over the summer. I think you'll just be glad you did. So gather the team and work with the resources. So the core team, what do you need? You need a few overseers. You need an overseer, someone who is going to be the one who takes responsibility for sending out the emails. Some churches I know are thinking of hiring like a youth worker. That could be a really good idea. If you have the means to hire even someone for 10 hours a week, I think that's a good idea, because there just can be a little bit of emailing and coordinating, and then running out and buying juice or buying pom-poms, or just getting the resources together. And sometimes it's easier if that's a paid person. But if not, someone who is passionate about that, get an overseer, and just be clear about the roles. And then you just need people for a craft team, a food team, a celebration team, and then the setup and takedown. And some of those might be the same people, but those are the core components that you need to get organized every month. You usually would have about 3 or 4 craft tables. And so you can choose from the resources. I'll show you that in a minute. And then the food is really important as well. And that can be, you're putting on a meal for up to perhaps 60, 70, 80 people, or 30 or 40 people, but it can still, it's very important. There's snacks at the beginning, there's food afterwards, and then someone to run the celebration. Celebration's about a 15-minute thing. And someone who can jump up and down and be lively and do action songs. You need to do action songs. I'll just say that at Messy Church. So when I was in the parish, my curates, they had to be able to do action songs. So, and I have to do action songs, and it's a lot of fun. Plus the setup and takedown. Hopefully with the takedown, the whole community will gather together and start cleaning up. That's kind of ideal, because that's again about ownership. So that you kind of encourage everybody present to start putting things away and cleaning up in the kitchen. And a lot of wonderful fellowship happens over that. But setup needs to happen and be ready for when people arrive. And if you have some creative person who likes decorating in a creative way, that's set them loose. Color, vibrancy, creativity, let it go. Streamers everywhere, whatever it is that your imagination run wild. Color, color, color. So that's going to be your coordinating team. After launching, so you have your first Messy Church, I suggest that you have a debrief meeting pretty early on to discuss what went well and what didn't go well, and any kind of problems that you might have encountered. So to think about what you might want to do next time a little better, or what you were really happy with, and to plan the next one. But once you get rolling, I think it's better if, as I said, it's ideal that you have someone appointed to really run this who's got a passion for this, either they're a staff person or whatever, but aim to meet termly and plan, say, 3 messy churches in advance. Otherwise, you can end up kind of tiring people out, and you don't want to tire out your volunteers. So if you could meet, say, in September and plan the fall, and then if you can meet in January and plan, till Easter, and then after Easter and plan the rest of the year, that's a more manageable number of meetings. But it depends on what works for you and your church. And this is Lucy Moore, who started Messy Church, who we all bow down to before. And as I said, she works for the Bible Reading Fellowship and helps provide oversight for the Messy Church movement and the resources. So what are some of the resources? Here's a couple of books that you can get. You just get them on Amazon. Starting Your Messy Church, A Beginner's Guide for Churches by Lucy and also Jane Ledbetter, who works for them. There's another one, Messy Church, Fresh Ideas for Building Christ-Centered Communities. So I would suggest, as a way of starting, you just get those books and sit down with a group of people who are interested and read them. And spend a period of time reading those. So I think, like, for example, if you're interested in starting Messy Church right now, I would get those and maybe spend now through to the fall planning and thinking, and start in January. So from now, I would launch in January. Or September, I would still launch in January, because you need that time. You need a really good lead time just to really understand what it is you're getting into. There's some other really cool books out there, and this is what I mean about the sort of creativity. So even though we have this structure, there's just infinite creativity alongside that. And it's really up to you how creative you want to be. So there's a whole science thing. There's these crazy Messy Church science things you can do with things fizzing and exploding and flying off into the air, and it's really kind of fun. There's also sports fun for Messy Churches, and then there's just more and more resources out there, more sessions that you can do. So you can buy books with sessions and then work with that. You can do crazy things like that, and you can also decide you're going to do an activity that's the whole group will do together, some really big art project that everyone will do en masse rather than separate art projects, right? So there's infinite creativity of what you can do. It's really, you can let your creative people run wild. But the core is really the Get Messy magazine. So you subscribe to that when you sign up, and then you get the Get Messy. And the leader gets it, one person gets it, and you can share it amongst yourselves, it's fine. And it has, as you see, January to April 2019, so this is the latest one. So it gives you complete celebrations for all of those months. And so it includes a theological reflection. It'll include quite a lot of craft ideas, more than you can do, so you can choose. And food ideas as well. And sometimes the food ideas, because they're English, need to be translated a little bit. They're British, I should say. And so, if it says mushy peas or jacket potatoes, you need to translate that into what will work for you. I remember one time when we did the crossing of the Red Sea, they suggested fish cakes for dinner. So that's the kind of fun sort of things that you can do. But anyway, and then of course we'll also give you an outline for the celebration with the messages, and that way it just keeps all the messaging aligned. And that's what's really important. Like when you prepare and you read this and you go through this together, you need to keep the messaging just aligned. It's not heavy, but just so that the craft people and the celebration people and the welcome people, everyone just kind of knows what's the message, what's the theme, what are we talking about today. So as you're crafting, you're just having a gentle conversation about that. And that's picked up on in the celebration. And then even maybe over dinner, we're just continuing a conversation. You need to register your Messy Church twice here in Canada. Oops, I've got that backwards there on my Messy Church thing. Anyways, register at the messychurch.org.uk website. That is the UK website, partly because they just like to really know how many Messy Churches there are all over the world. And if you go on that website, there's just a ton of resources as well that you can use. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt with the question, but how many messy churches are there all over the world?
Tens of thousands now.
Whoa.
It's really big. In England alone, it's now the size of a large diocese.
Whoa.
They're everywhere. And second, in Canada, if you could register at Messy Church Canada, which is under Wycliffe College there, that again helps us to know how many Messy churches we have. And we have about 200 in Canada, which I think is really good. Half of which roughly are Anglican, half of which roughly are United Church. And then there's a few others, Salvation Army, Pentecostals, and even the Moravians. There's 2 Moravians Messy churches. Even the Seventh-day Adventists are doing Messy church. So it's all over the place. So if we ask you to register twice, there's no cost to registration. The only cost is for the Get Messy. And subscribe to that, and that keeps you up to date. And I suggest using that. As I said, there are books as well, but it's just kind of really great getting the latest things out of Messy Church and using that information. But, you know, this is not like a liturgy you have to follow. It's information is to help you. You have to figure out how to make it work for your Messy Church and your community there. The next thing you have to do once you've done that and you're going to launch, you really need to advertise. And advertising is crucial. It's going to be by both word of mouth and by visual. And that's why the Messy Splat is so important. That is our logo. And so parents can see that. You see it in posters. You see it on a banner on your church. You see it in cards. And then they see it when they come. And they know that where they're at. And they understand that. And you can see there's a example of a Messy Church poster at St. Clair's. And they, you know, craft, celebration, food. It has the date. It has the time. For all the family, notice it says children must be accompanied by adult. It's a nice, bright, happy-looking, creative, wacky-looking poster. And so you can, again, let your imagination kind of run wild. And you can use the splat. If you are going to do Messy Church and call it Messy Church, you're welcome to use the splat in anything that you want to do. So, so feel free to use that. You just get it off the website from BRF. Leanne.
You could just not answer my question if I'm annoying you, but do you have to use the splat, or is it an option?
I think it's a good idea to use the splat.
Okay.
Because I think it helps parents understand exactly what they're getting themselves into, and it identifies, here we are, we know what we're at Messy Church. And if you don't use the splat, I mean, you don't have to use the splat, but it's just that it's less clear, you know, visually what it is. So I would suggest, like, if you really want to go wild, that you get a banner. Like if you know you're going to do this and you're going to do it for a long time, and get a banner for your church so it's on the side of your church, and they'll see the splat there. And I was saying to Jim there, you know, I go by St. Philip's, Montreal West every day on the train, and I thought it was really great. Their church sign is positioned right on the edge of the yard, so that when you go by on the train, you can see exactly what time their services are, right? And so that's also a great place on that building somewhere to have that splat. And have it on posters inside, especially if your church has a lot of rentals like ballet groups. You know, put posters up about Messy Church.
Put it on your Facebook.
Put it all over your Facebook, and also make little cards which you can give out, because invite is going to be one of the ways you start really getting this going. And you're going to find it an easy thing to invite people to. And then invite those families that are peripheral. You know, those famous peripheral families who you baptized, married, and whatnot. They may really love this. This is something they could really relate to. So invite, and just see what happens. There's something else I wanted to say about that, but anyways, there you go. Oops, I went on the wrong way. So what does the actual Messy Church event look like? Roughly speaking, if you have a 5 o'clock Messy Church, it's about a 2-hour slot that you're giving. And so, as I say, about 4 o'clock, people need to arrive for setup. The place needs to be completely set up. And then at 5 o'clock, you open the doors. And so it's kind of, people walk in when they're available, when they get there. There should be a welcome table staffed by someone welcoming people. That's really important. There's a friendly face welcoming people. And snacks are available. And then you may have 3 or 4 craft tables operating. And you may have other things. You may have a Lego table for some kids. We ended up having an adult table for some adults who just kind of were coming. and just kind of see, where the Spirit goes. But you're going to have craft tables operating at that point. And so that goes for about 50 minutes. And then at around 10 to 6, you would have a transition time, so you let people know that it's time to finish up. And at 6 p.m. we would have our celebration. So that's a 15-minute thing. So that's going to involve, usually my favorite song is the Wiggle song. You can always Google or YouTube that.
You could do it.
I could do it. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. And I'm not going to do it now. But I love the Wiggle song. It's my favorite song. And, we kind of call into worship with the Wiggle song. And then there's so many ways you could do the celebration. You could do it in a godly play style. You can, have people dressed up in things. And one time I dressed up as Moses and led the people out of Egypt, and we did a whole Red Sea thing. You can tell the story in any way that you find that you can do creatively. I don't personally like using video, that's the only thing, because I think there's so much video in our world already, and it's kind of an easy way out. But if really there's no one who can tell the story, you can use videos, it's just that, but I do back it up with a PowerPoint. I'll always have my splat on the back. Leanne?
So there's not a formula for the worship part?
There's not a real formula. It's just that it has to be celebratory, creative, and we are retelling the story in some way, and we pray together at that point. And you may find there's a tie-in. There's usually a tie-in from the crafts to the celebration that you can use. For example, like one time, we were writing heart prayers, and it was like, like one of those heart monitor things, and people wrote things on prayers. And so then we used that in the celebration, right? So it really was the prayers of the people happening. It was beautiful. And so there's a lot of tie-ins. Then, so around 6:15 is dinner, and then by 7 o'clock it's clean up and go home. You really need to be moving by 7 o'clock. One of the things I always found, any parents there, I don't know, that when my kids were little and we would visit grandma's, we'd always overstay and they would get wild, and then, things go too far, and then this crying and screaming starts, and then we'd have to take them home. And I think less can be more with Messy Church as well. And by around 7 o'clock, people are tired, and they have to get their kids to bed if they're a family. So by 7 o'clock, you just make a move and start tidying up. Because you know what? There's always the next Messy Church. So here's a couple of pictures. This is what a craft event looks like. So everyone's in there crafting away. So you can see they got a screen at the back with a Messy Church splat. Oh, I guess, yes, you can't see this, can you, if you're on it? Should I turn it around?
Yeah, maybe just show Facebook.
There. Oh, I can see it myself. Can you see? So there's crafting.
So I don't see it higher or lower. I don't see it. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I do see it. Great.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it looks like. Lots of people going around doing lots of crafts. And then here's the celebration. So as you can see, it's boop. So celebration is a lot of fun. There might be some kind of crazy thing you're doing. There's for sure going to be an action song. Action song, action song, action song. We involve everybody. But not always. Sometimes it's really quiet. Like we did a beautiful one for Christmas one time where we all sat really quietly. A really quiet, reflective time, and it was beautiful too. So it's not just about loud, it can be about reflective. And then the meal. And, right, you just have this all-age picture. And that is just, to me, where some of the real power happens is over the meal. And I find so often the people who have been hurt by church or just put off by church, they come and they're being offered this meal. And they're eating and they're like, wow, so this is church. They can't get over it. And we're not demanding anything of them. And it's beautiful. The breaking of the bread is really crucial. Those are the three crucial components. So how you want to do that in your church is fine. Allow your creativity to run wild, but use those components. So any other questions or thoughts at this point? Any Zoomers have a question?
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just struck by how it allows people, I've heard people criticize Messy Church because they say it doesn't allow for their creativity. And from what I'm hearing from you is it really does.
Yes.
There's a loose formula which
Yes.
you can use and just with your own gifts. I think that's really a big encouragement that I learned from you today.
Yes, I think so. I think, and that spirit is really sort of moving through, the messy church movement a lot, actually. And so I think the question to ask yourself is what I'm doing kind of in the spirit of messy church? Is it kind of like other messy churches in a loose way? But it doesn't have to be in a rigid way. As I said, we did a messy murder mystery. I mean, it was a scream. It was hilarious. So, the sense of creativity is really kind of growing through that, and how you choose to tell the stories. But I think that sometimes people say things like, well, if we're doing an evangelistic event, we don't want to talk about God. And I think there's a place in church for that, like for just social events or, potluck dinners are great things to do. Invite your friends. You don't have to talk about God. Messy church isn't one of those. So messy church is church. So we talk about God. We just talk about God in a way that is relatable for people who don't go to church. Leanne.
Great news. Kathleen Pilkington, who is a big messy churcher, she has a comment.
Oh,
she
great.
says, we start with a short story so that everyone knows the theme before going to the craft table. However, this sometimes goes on too long.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also a question, how do we let the theme be known without the story?
Yeah, we thought about that too, but the only problem is because people come late. So it depends on your messy church, because the ones I've been involved in, people didn't all show up at 5 o'clock. And so we would definitely make a poster with the theme. I think it can be a great thing for the welcomer to kind of talk about the theme. I would put the theme up on my PowerPoint. I always just have that on the screen the whole time during the craft time. The messy church splat and what the theme is. But I do think in the sort of working with the leaders, like the craft people, have just a really important job to do to keep that little conversation going during the craft time, and to keep in mind this is not just craft. I mean, I see the crafting as the liturgy of the word in a way. That's where the Bible's being taught, through craft. And so, often we'll have the theme printed out and just on the table. So for the craft leaders to be constantly aware that that they're teaching, and to do that in a low-key way, just asking questions. You're making sheep, right? And I remember gluing cotton things on sheep forms, and you were kind of talking about, Jesus tells us that he's a good shepherd, and what does that mean? If I'm a sheep and he loves, so you're kind of asking these questions as you go along. To keep the craft people really focused on that, I think. Others?
This one's for me again. How long did it take you, in your experience, to get your team of messy churchers sort of equipped to do all this stuff?
Yeah, I went on sabbatical actually, and then they got together. So maybe that's but they started gathering in September and launched in April. So maybe that's I think that's a good guideline actually. Or as I said, I think if you want to start in January, now is a good time to start, because you need to prepare yourself for the fact that it's every month, not just one. It's not a one-off event, and to really think about the implications for your church.
And I guess the more advanced planning you do,
Yeah.
the easier it is come January to implement the last 4 sessions or whatever it will
Yes, yeah, you really looked ahead. And also you've got your advertising sort of plan going, because that's going to be important. That'll have an implication for your administration, right? There's a new thing to advertise.
I have another one for you from someone.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn Ledger says, I'm starting as a priest at a church in a few weeks with a well-established twice-monthly messy
Wow.
church. I've never done it.
Mm.
Any advice, aside all the great advice you've already given?
Well, I would go to an aerobics class and jump up and down. I always had a very aerobics approach to the whole thing. But really, no, I mean, the spirit of Messy Church is fun, creativity, and it may be that your job, how I used to preside, I still presided at Messy Church. I realized my job was to preside as the priest when I was in the parish, and I presided by keeping time. So my job was to go around with a little sign that said 10 minutes to celebration. And that was the way I presided. Very different, right, from Sunday morning, but I still had a job to do, going around, kind of talking, but just keeping the time. And that may be, and I often would do the celebration But I think it's important to find other creative people to do the celebration also. So, and you may be roping in people. I mean, if you're, sometimes you're pulling together people to act out the celebration at the last minute. That's all part of the creative fun. Yeah. Support your lay people who are doing that. Let them know you're on board with them. And you're going to love it. You're going to have so much fun.
She goes on to say, are there elements of Messy Church that could come into Sunday morning, or is it better to keep them separate?
Some people do actually try to go messy on Sunday mornings. But I think I'm a very traditional person on Sunday morning. I think it's kind of interesting when sort of people make the transition into Sunday morning. I think that what changed I've seen in places for a Sunday morning after Messy Church is just the energy level in the church changes. And I think that the culture of the church begins to shift. So, Sunday morning is different. Sunday morning has a different kind of vibe to it. That's how I feel anyways. But some people do try to go messy sometimes on Sunday morning. I mean, family services. We've kind of, with our Christmas pageant, we were more influenced by godly play. We went in a sort of godly play direction with our Christmas pageant, so very different. Let's see what it opens up for you in terms of what creative things you want to do Sunday morning. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom? Got any burning things? Ooh, it's almost 11 o'clock. I have one more slide. Should I go to my last slide? All right. Sorry, this looks really kind of weird. What the heck am I doing with this? Leadership styles, communication styles. I'll put this on as well so the Facebook people can see. This comes from a slightly different part of my life. This comes from restorative practices. And it's about how we lead and lead things, and how we communicate. And this is what I was just talking a bit about. You can look this up. It's called the Social Discipline Window. You can find that anywhere online. And it's just about different styles of leadership. And so there's 2, 4, right? Different kind of ways that we lead. Sometimes we may be accustomed to a very top-down style of leadership, maybe from clergy or even from lay leaders, which is a little bit dictatorial, right? I'm the paid person. I'm the trained person. So it's my way or the highway. On the other hand, sometimes we might find a kind of withdrawn sort of leadership that says, well, for someone who's disengaged and they're not really too engaged, not supportive. Another one might be a very kind of leadership that is doing everything for you. Oh, I'll run out, and I'll buy all this stuff. Don't worry, it's okay. I'll take this responsibility. I'll go and get the juice, and I'll go and get the pom-poms, and I'll do this, and I'll do it all. And in Messy Church, all of that would lead to some real burnout issues, I think. And the ideal style that I think works with Messy Church is a with style, and I really want to leave that word with you as you think about doing Messy Church. And think about your own leadership style as a person. Think about the leadership within your community. And if you want to do Messy Church, I think to try to think about leadership with people is really important, because there needs to be leadership. Someone has to coordinate this, and people need to kind of keep the theological ball rolling with it. But, if someone is always doing all the shopping and all that, they're going to burn out. And what we don't want to do is end up with a community full of consumers who come and consume the Messy Church product and leave again. And I think that being able to lead with one another and then with the Messy Church people is the most powerful thing there is. So it may be that if someone is looking like they're interested and they're coming on, you could say, would you like to do a craft with me next month? So you're not laying on them an obligation to do a craft table for life. You're doing it with them. And actually the kitchen can be a very powerful place for people to serve. Some people really love that, and you should be open to that. And kitchens can be kind of territorial places in churches, right? We have certain ways of doing things in our kitchens, and I think you need to be open enough to be able to say, oh, what do you want to work in the kitchen with me? Would you want to help in the kitchen with me? And that can be a real discipling place. And it's a way that you can bring messy churchers into this community and help them grow as disciples, because they'll be helping make Messy Church happen too. And it's sort of 1 month at a time. And that's my last slide.
So we're almost out of time, but
Yeah.
if you could leave us with, just tell us, like, why should we do Messy Church? You've given us lots of tools and ideas and strategies, but why should we do this? Why should we care?
We should care because, for one thing, Messy Church is a tool God is using powerfully all over the world right now. And I can tell you that from my experience, having just met with people from all over the world, this is something God is really using. And I think another reason is God is using our own natural gifts and creativity through Messy Church. And I think that is very beautiful as well. And thirdly, Messy Church is founded on the principles of disciple making. And so if you are interested in making disciples, Messy Church is a really great tool you can use. It's not just about the craft or fun. It's very serious in its focus, and it is to make disciples. And this is a great tool. There's a lot of energy around there, and it's something that you can do in a way that's right for you and your community. And that's it.
Love it.
Yeah. So thank you all for hopping on and joining in.
Thank you, Neil.
And anyways, drop me an email or whatever, and we can talk some more. Bye.